unmute. There we go. Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Tuddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. So that's what we're here to do tonight with you all. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and headlines and all of that nonsense. We're sticking to real football. We're sticking to Packers football. We're diving into the top topics around the Packers every week. During the season, we're covering the games. In the offseason, we're covering the rumors and the drama and the NFL draft and the combine and all this fun stuff that we're in the middle of right now. So if y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Go follow us on all the socials. Subscribe to Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things help us out a lot. Tim, how you doing this evening, sir?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good, man. It's been a quieter week this week for the Packers than it was the week leading up to our last episode for sure. So,
Yeah.
but I kind of like it, right? It's a nice drama-free off season so far. It seems like, compared to former years anyway.
It's nice to not have the drama, though. I wish there was a little more news that we could talk about, breaking news, maybe some free agent signings and stuff. But yeah, it's been quiet, and I love not having the drama that we've been dealing with the last few years. So that's cool. And, it's about a month away now from the draft. So really you can focus in on that because I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of news between now and then, most likely. So, yeah, it's draft season, and we're diving into it tonight. Gute talked, as we record this Monday night. Gute talked today at the NFL owners meetings. Matt LaFleur talk on Tuesday. Gute didn't break any big news, no major headlines coming out of it, but there were some cool nuggets that came out of it that we can jump into here.
Yeah, and I think he gave us an idea that there's not much to expect now between now and the draft, right?
Yeah.
And he makes sense, right? You just don't know how it's going to fall. So you see what you can get from there. And, in prior years, he's batted clean up in free agency and gotten some pretty good folks in the months following the draft. So good stuff to talk about there. But before we get started, let's drop a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets, or you can browse their website at theticketking.com. All right, man, let's jump in. Let's just talk about this Gute interview. I thought it was pretty interesting, man. And at least for kind of the dull part of the offseason where you aren't really going to get much, especially with like the fog of war of the leading up to the draft and everything. But I thought it was kind of interesting. It's like, okay. First of all, he's a lot higher on Nixon than I think most fans are. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, and I compared it to Josh Myers. We were killing Josh Myers last season. The coaches came out and they raved about Josh Myers.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of similar to that. And, I get some of his points, which, I have to read between the lines to really figure out what he's thinking and how they feel about him. But I think a lot of it goes back to they think that he can be better in this defense. I mean, one of Gute's quotes was like, Halfley looked at his film and liked him, gave the blessing, said, go ahead and, re-sign him. And they think that, Halfley and a new coaching staff, the new scheme can make him a better player. And that's not far-fetched to think. I mean, we were just talking last week about how Barry misused guys when, after Devondre Campbell came out with his Twitter rant. We talked about all throughout the season how he was misusing guys. So maybe this is one of the guys that was misused, Keyshawn Nixon, and they can make better use of him, give him, just look at his talent and see what he provides and make, better use of that in the defense. Maybe the defense can cover up some of his weaknesses. Whatever they want to do with the nickel position maybe fits him better than what he was asked to do in Barry's scheme. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it too is it's a 1-year deal. I know it's a 3-year deal, but it's really a 1-year deal. So
Right.
I think this is a lot like they may like him. They may like some things that he's done. Like he does play aggressive. He is an aggressive player with an attitude on defense, which is cool to see. And it was really like his first full year as a starting slot guy because the previous year Russell Douglas was in the slot. So that was his first year as a starter. So maybe there's growth that they see. So between his own personal growth and what they can do with him in a new defense, I think that's what their hope is. But, and we'll get into this later, it's, maybe now that it seems like they may make more of a focus on that slot cornerback nickel role as a starter, that maybe that's going to be something they prioritize more in the draft. And Nixon kind of gives them like the immediate starter where they don't have to go and you have to draft somebody to start day one at that position because you have your starter Nixon, but you can draft somebody who then can either take Nixon's job at some point in 2024 or take his job later on down the line, but you can groom that person. So they're not strapped in where they absolutely must draft a player there that has to start right away. So it gives them flexibility. But yeah, we talked about Nixon. I don't love what he's done in the slot. I think they need to get better there. But I can also see, probably their point of view is the defense might help him get better. So I think that's realistic, and that's what the hope is.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And certainly from the standpoint that we talked about last week, right? With, just overall being an improved scheme, new coaches, just new philosophies. But the fact that Halfley was very interested in him, and Nixon's not an old guy, right? We shouldn't talk about him like he's 32 years old or something. I believe he entered the league in 2019, so he's still a relatively young guy. And for being an all-pro returner, it's like, shoot, anything good you get from him out of the slot is, cake, right? I mean, that's a bonus.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. And yeah, I mean, Goot brought it up. And we've heard it before too, but nickel is essentially the base defense of the NFL right now. Everything else is a sub package. So if that's true, yeah, that CB3 is an important spot. And we've seen Goot's tendencies and patterns in the past, and we've talked about this plenty of times now on this podcast, that, all right, well, when he's going to invest premium draft capital, he wants a leadership presence in that position. So he specifically said he likes, what Nixon has done in that slot position. And if he likes the leadership style, I think it makes perfect sense that he's probably going to invest maybe a day one, day two pick at that position, or at least be prepared to. I think, we're going to get into it later with corners specifically, but it's a decent draft, right? And at the end of the first round, there's a handful of positions that could be best player available at that point. And it's really just up to Goot to decide who that is at the end of the day. There's no magical right or wrong answer. But you can see cornerbacks being available right there that might make a case for being best player available. And I know one of them is the star of all the Packers mock drafts on Twitter, Cooper DeJean, and we don't know if he'll fall or not. His pre-draft has actually been relatively mysterious, which is interesting. Maybe it's like a reverse psychology tactic he's trying. Who knows?
Maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to be prepared to make that move at that position, and I think it makes sense. If that's going to be the base style of defense that you're going to play the majority of the time, yeah, you need a real full-time starter at that position now. Whereas like cornerback 3 used to be kind of your first backup, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so. Absolutely. And, it's a really important position. It would be nice to see the Packers to start prioritizing that beyond Nixon. But, if Halfley in the new scheme can get the most out of Nixon, so be it. That would be great. And hopefully they can develop a younger, not that Nixon's old, but like a younger kid behind him to potentially replace him down the road. But yeah, I mean, I don't love bringing Nixon back to be the starting slot, but I get it from what the Packers are thinking. They're hoping the scheme turns it around for him and makes him a better player. So I get that part of it. We'll see. We'll see if it works out enough for him. But it's worth a shot,
Heck yeah, man.
I hope it's for the best. I have my doubts, but I get their point of view with it. So yeah, but to what you're saying is they seem to like him a lot more internally than we do as fans externally.
Yeah, yeah. But hey, I'm happy he's back. He's an All-Pro returner. The
Yeah, that
Packers,
part of it's great.
you need that. Let's hold on to that. Let's not waste that because otherwise, special teams is looking pretty bad. So
Yeah, it's been a long time since they had a really good return man until Keyshawn Nixon. So yeah,
right.
that's part of it. I'm all for, especially and whatever the new rules might be with kickoff returns, he might be getting a lot more returns. So
He actually commented on that himself. He's like, "Y'all gonna throw a
yeah,
flag on me when I take them back to back?" I'm like, "Oof, let's do this."
yeah,
Yes, give me that experiment.
yeah.
He did make a comment that I thought was interesting. He said that his best football is in front of him. Gute saying that about Nixon. That would be good,
Maybe.
right? Like that'd be really
Yeah.
good. We'd love to see that. So the fact that he believes that, I'm not here to say Gute's wrong.
I mean, it's possible. Like I said, I mean, he was a first time starting corner, so maybe he views that as like first time starter. He's going to get better at that position. What they're going to ask him to do is going to be better for his game. Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Now, overall, it was an interesting one. We did get the answer. At least, we all kind of assumed it. He confirmed that Aaron Jones, the breakdown was with the pay cut. Makes sense,
Yeah.
and so, well, most of Packers Twitter got about an hour of thinking we had the best backfield in the NFL. As soon as I saw Josh Jacobs, I was like, "Oh, Aaron Jones is gone. That's not okay." Well,
Yeah. And Goody confirmed that and said it was
yeah,
really never a consideration.
no,
So,
no.
yeah, it sucks. But he kind of confirmed, like you said, they wanted a pay cut. They
Yeah,
couldn't make it work. And so they moved on.
yeah, no. So it is what it is. We knew that, but I guess maybe it was good to get that kind of confirmation. But
Yeah.
he did confirm that. It's hard. We know that. He said all the right things you'd expect him to say there. When he was asked about McKinney, I thought it was interesting in that he really probably gave an honest answer that sounded like
It
a
was a great
canned
answer.
answer. But yeah, I mean, it's a rare combination of qualities about a player that don't come available very often, right? And he's young, he's a leader, he's talented, obviously, all of these things. So when you ask yourself, all right, did he just go get McKinney? And if they didn't get McKinney, were they going to go get somebody else? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. And this, I think it should be something that we as Packer fans like take into future free agencies is that, and Goody came out right out and said it, like he was one of the top safeties in football. He's young in the prime of his career and he became available. And he said, we do free agency before he gets cranked up and going, but most of the time these guys are either franchise tagged or they resign, or in some cases they get traded. It's rare when somebody like this becomes available. And that's why they felt like they had to go after him. Like this is, one of the best safeties in football. And he's 24 years old. And they felt like we're going to pay for this kind of guy. We just think that highly of him. And I think for us as fans going in the future, when we look at free agency, like that's what we should be looking at. Those are the players like, all right, if these guys hit, this could be the Packer. It's not going to be the guy who's 30 that they're going to pay top of the market. They're not going to do
Right.
that. They want to pay somebody who's 24, 25, who's hitting their prime of their career, and they can have them for 3 or 4 years at the best part of their career. And that's who they would be most aggressive for. It's not saying they're not going to sign somebody who's 30, but they're not going to pay top of the market money to those guys. They will for somebody that's young and among the best of his position. And
Exactly.
that's what they did. And, from the way Goody talked, they were surprised that McKinney became available. And I think we all were like, how could the Giants let this guy get the free agency? Why wouldn't you tag him? Because that would have kept teams away from him.
Yeah.
And they thought, he's available. We're going to pay whatever it takes to go get him.
Yeah, and I think that was an interesting take and a little bit of transparency that, again, could easily be overlooked, but they don't know. Like he's sitting there. He said, you don't know till Monday morning rolls around. Oh, they didn't tag him. Oh, okay.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
let's go. And
Right.
so, we're all sitting back here, and I think we imagine, at least I do sometimes, Goot having this like master plan, right? He's got like his big whiteboard and all his chess pieces that he's, planning to move around. And I mean, there's probably something to that extent, but you
Yeah.
have to be able to make moves on the fly, and that's where you you said it, you nailed it on the head, man. It's more about like future free agency and how Goot thinks, like and instead of thinking like, oh, this guy would be cool or this guy would be cool, how is he thinking? And
Hmm.
him showing you that, like, well, we don't know, but if this guy does come available, we will make a move. And I
That's
think
yeah.
I think we were getting a little bit to the point where we were kind of mocking him. It's like, oh, Goot's in the conversation again, and it
Right.
was like with every single one of like a free agent or whoever. Um, and he kind of he stepped up to the plate. He's like, yeah, when a player checks all of these boxes, we will move. So I thought it was refreshing to hear that and to kind of connect all those dots. And it's like, yeah, I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. 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 I thought it was really cool for him to be pretty open with it like that. That's, he's telling you what they're thinking as far as
Yeah,
free agency goes, at least the, top of the line free agents go. And I think to your point too, I think there probably was a fallback option on, other safeties that they liked or were targeting, but they weren't going out to get those safeties at the top of the market. Those guys were like second tier guys that they would have said,
right.
okay, we didn't get McKinney or McKinney didn't become available. So what else can we do now? And maybe they would have made multiple moves for a couple safeties and a linebacker. Like maybe we would have saw more guys come in for the cap money that they spent on McKinney. It's possible. But McKinney was their guy. And so like next year, just for an example, if there's a defensive lineman that's 24, 25 years old, that's going to be available, that's one of the best in his league, that's the guy you look at for maybe the Packers make a run for him. And I'm not
That's
saying it, I'm just using defensive line. I don't know if that'll be a need next year, but it was just, first position that popped up.
felt
But
like a good one to throw out there.
yeah. So
Um,
they don't want to pay somebody that's 32 or 34. They're paying somebody that's 24 and 25,
right. Yeah,
which is the
and
right philosophy.
it's working, and it is. It kind of it tugs at the heart a little bit, right? Because you do lose players that you don't want to lose, and you usually lose them before you want, are prepared to. Um, like Aaron Jones, and there's been plenty of other examples in the past. We don't have to go through all of them, but they are right more than they're wrong. And
Yeah.
when you see how this organization is being managed right now in comparison to how other organizations are being managed, mainly one to the south in the same general region. Um, it's just it's nice to be on this side of that, and it's like, okay, there's a price to pay there. Sometimes we lose our heroes a little bit early. We're sitting here watching Game of Thrones again, right? It's like as soon as you like a guy, he's gonna get killed off. And that's kind of how it is. But you still love the story because it's so stinking good. And that's what's happening year in and year out. The Packers, it's a great story. So I enjoyed the interview with Goot. I thought it was cool, some of the information he gave.
Yeah.
Again, not like groundbreaking, but if you're paying
Right.
attention, he's giving you some flavor there. I wanted to also acknowledge no rush on the Love extension, it sounded like.
Yeah.
So when it gets done, it gets done. They want to do it the right way.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be, I mean, they have to wait till May anyway because he had signed the extension last year. So you have to wait a calendar year.
Right.
But I would think it's done before the regular season starts, maybe before training camp starts, but definitely before the regular season starts.
I gotta believe it. It's not an issue. Doesn't seem like anybody's unhappy in the situation.
Yeah, no, and Goody's acknowledging like we're gonna pay him. So
Yeah, you have
I
to.
it's
It
just a matter of can they come to how quickly they can come to an agreeable number. But he knows he's gonna have to pay him, and he knows he's gonna have to pay him at the top of the market for quarterbacks.
the
So
sooner he pays him, the less he pays him.
yeah,
That's really
yeah.
what it comes down to. The Cowboys learned that the hard way with Dak Prescott.
Oh yeah, and they're still learning that because
Yeah,
he's got all the leverage.
yeah,
And the other thing too with Love is like they've created cap space now for 2024, the Packers. So if you do the extension now, you can kick more of that into this year and take up some of that cap space. So then
yep.
future years get his cap number down a little bit. So that's something to watch for as well.
And Jordan Love's not a dummy. He knows that. Guy's gonna
Yeah.
get paid. Guy's gonna get paid more than once.
Yeah,
And so it's like, look,
absolutely.
man, take a page out of Tom Brady's book. Get paid, but get paid strategically. So yeah, I'm not worried about the situation at all, but of course, kind of like the Rashawn Gary situation. It's like once it's done, it'll be a lot nicer, you know.
Yeah, right, right. Let's just get to
Um,
that point.
so overall, enjoyable interview from Goot.
Yeah.
Good little nuggets of information there. Another thing that happened: NFL banning the hip drop tackle. And Twitter is on fire about this one. I'm part of the fire. I'm not happy about this. I
You're
don't
throwing
like
the logs
this.
on the fire.
I am logs on the fire, man. I'm over here burning up. Yeah, I don't like this. And I'll give a shout out to NFL Hitman, Mr. Watson, out there doing some great work on Twitter and really throwing some great education out there. He has a great perspective about this hip drop tackle that I think needs to be acknowledged, and we got to respect that. And it's that a hip drop tackle, as they've defined it and shown it in these videos, is essentially a guy who took a poor angle or is behind the runner, you know, tackler's not in the ideal position to make a tackle. And he's right. And his point is these guys aren't being trained properly to make a good tackle. And he's right. But this rule gives the refs way too much power. Way too much power. This is devastating right now. Vegas is not happy. Tell you that, right? Or maybe they're really happy, depending on how things work. We don't know, but yeah, you're giving the refs way too much power here, and I get it. Like, okay, guy's out of position. Guy needs to do a better job at being in position to make a good tackle and make the right tackle. All that, totally agree. But that's not where we are. Where we are is guys have had poor training, and these guys are out here playing for millions of dollars, and they're going to make whatever play they can make. You know what I mean? Like, game's on the line. You're not sitting here going, well, I could tackle this guy, but it's a hip drop tackle, so I'm not going to try. Like, you just know. You're going to do it anyway. And that's the thing that for me is like, okay, is this fixing anything, or are you just going to start fining a bunch of guys? Like, what do you think, Tim? I could burn on this for a while.
No, I'm with you. I don't think they need to over officiate any more than they already do. Like, there are too many rules. The referees are too involved, and everything is too complicated for football. Like, we've gone years with not being able to figure out what a catch is. Like, I hold my breath. I sit there, watch replays. I'm like, he looks like a catch to me, but just wait because they might challenge it.
What about a sack?
Who knows? A sack, roughing. Look, we lived through that as Packers fans when they changed roughing the quarterback. Clay Matthews tackling quarterbacks, and nope, it's a flag because he landed on him. There he drove, and it was unbelievable. So they don't need to give the referees any more stuff to do. I thought, and I try not to kill the referees, but they did a really poor job overall in the league last year, I thought, in 2023.
Pretty poor. It was bad.
Right. So you're starting from that, and now you're going to say, well, here's another new rule. And they talked about it today. Like, it's a rule where they have to look for 3 different parts of it for it to be a hip drop tackle penalty. And it's like, you got to catch him, you got to turn him a certain way. Defender has to leave his feet and then land on his legs. And they're doing that with the fastest players in the world in a split second. And these referees, with everything else going on that they have to officiate, are supposed to look at a tackle like that and decide, like, am I throwing the flag or not? And if you do, it's 15 yards, which could decide it's going to change a drive, which could change a game.
Yeah.
Like, there's too much officiating. There are too many rules, and it's too complicated for these guys. And what I'm hoping happens is that we make a big deal about it now, and we'll get to the regular season, and we hardly see any. And it's more of like, it's an emphasis now, and we're going to rarely see one. Or maybe that's happening, and they're not going to throw the flag as much. They're just going to fine the players, which
that's what I've heard.
They shouldn't have to do that either. But, whatever the fine is, these players can pay it. So I'm not as worried about what their fine is. I'm more worried about what's happening on the field. I'm hoping it doesn't turn into like what the pass interference rules have been when they get changed, or roughing the passer when it got changed, which is beginning of the season, you're seeing this all over the place. People are
It's
freaking
awful.
out. Yeah, it's awful. And then it's going to be like they're going to have to change it. They're going to have to make it less of an emphasis. Like I'm hoping we're just making too big of a deal about it right now, and when we actually get to it, we're going to kind of like forget about the rule, and we won't see it that much. I hope so. I could
You're
very well be
optimistic,
wrong.
my friend.
I know I could very well be wrong, but
Oh
yeah,
my.
I mean it I think we're going to be sitting there like, is that a clean tackle or not? Like, what's a clean tackle now? We don't know what roughing the quarterback is. We don't know what a catch is.
We don't know what a tackle is. We don't
Now
know
we
what
don't know what a
football
tackle
is.
is.
What
It's
is
like,
football? What
and it
is
all
this
comes.
game?
I think part of it, like they waive the player safety thing, which is great. I want player safety too. But what it really comes down to is,
What about the turf?
what about the turf? Well, we can get to that too. What about the turf? But it all comes down to money. And
Yeah.
they see that offense dropped off last year, scoring dropped off. So they want more scoring. Even though everybody's watching it, it was the most watched season, shattered all kinds of records and all that. People were like, they're making billions. They still want more scoring because they think if scoring continues to drop, people are gonna tune it out. So they want more scoring. And all these rules that they come up with are, mostly always tilted towards the offense. And this is part of that. So it's gonna keep offensive players healthy, which they hope increases scoring.
It's just frustrating, man. Like that kind of, I don't know. It's like just manipulation of the game. I don't like it. I don't like. I get
No.
it. Like oh, let's try to make the offense better or more or whatever. I don't do it. I like
And
the
it's
game how it is.
it's guys are going to get hurt. It's a physical
It's a
game.
violent game.
It's what happens. Like, and if you
Yeah.
don't want that, then put flags on them and say no more tackling.
I
And I
I
don't think,
oh man, you're
and I
making me
think
scared, Tim.
sometimes that's what it's coming to. I think sometimes in the past, like with the head injuries, yes, get them out of the league. And I think we saw in the past some guys, Chuck Cecil, former Packer, would take headshots at guys, and you don't need that. I don't think there's anybody going to make a tackle. I don't think a linebacker's going to make a tackle and saying, I'm going to drop my hip on this guy and I hope I break his leg.
No.
Like, I don't see that. I don't think it's a malicious thing. Whereas sometimes I think the headshots at times, we saw the player. I think, there were guys who took illegal shots at guys. The dude that used to play for the Bengals, whose name's Burfict, Vontez Burfict, he
Oh
was a
yeah,
cheap shot
perfect.
artist.
Yeah.
He did it on purpose.
Well, and that was a different era of football too. I mean,
Right. But
I remember 2005, or maybe that was a little too early. But like 2007, 2008, when YouTube started to be kind of the football highlight, place to go, and the compilations of Ed Reed and Ray Lewis just leveling dudes, and Troy Polamalu and
yeah,
the NFL used to make promos with those things, and then
they still do.
all of a sudden, these they start getting these CTE things and lawsuits, and
Right.
now it's like, okay, all right, hang on, maybe that's not what we want to glorify.
And
And
that drives
again,
me nuts.
well, you're right. We don't need the headshots, and the game doesn't need to be about kill shots. And I think ultimately that kind of emphasis of, hey, let's back off a little bit was good, but
Mhm.
this is the point where it has definitely gone too far. If it wasn't with the, roughing the passer nonsense we've dealt with, but yeah, I mean it was really ridiculous though, because the NFL used to glorify that kind of stuff.
They still do.
Well, and they really in a lot of ways still do, but
Go
at the same time they're like player safety. It's like, well,
right.
okay, you can make the change to grass from turf real quick. We see what you do with soccer when they come
Yeah,
to
they're doing
town.
it for the World Cup. And
Yeah,
go back to Alan Lazard when
yeah,
when they played the Dolphins in 2022, I think it was 22 or whatever year it was,
it might
21.
have been 22.
Yeah, and he threw the big block on, and he knocked over a Dolphin. And that might even been the one where he was counting how many guys he knocked down. They put it up on Twitter. It was cool, and they were and then the next week it comes out he got fined for that. He shouldn't have done it. And it's like, you're gonna fine this guy, but yet
After
you're
you used it for a
after
promo,
you used it for a promo to get clicks and views and all this stuff. And it's like,
shameless.
really? And they do that all the time. And to your point too about the turf, like these owners who are all billionaires, rich beyond our wildest dreams, don't want to put grass field in because it's going to cost more money to maintain it. Not like it's going to cost billions, Like they have the money, but they don't want to put
Some
it in.
teams do it. Look at Arizona.
Right. There's plenty of teams.
Like
Arizona, yeah,
Green
there's
Bay
plenty of
is,
teams.
it's like half and half, I guess. But Green
Yeah.
Bay invests a lot in their turf or their
And
field.
yeah, and they don't let anybody they don't let anybody on it ever.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't, let fans on it for stadium tours and all that stuff. But they're going to get the World Cup in some of these stadiums, and we'll take the turf out and put grass in because of the World Cup, because they're going to get money for that, and they're going to get the publicity of hosting a World Cup game. And it's like, wait, you're going to do it for a soccer match, but you won't do it for your own employees, the players. Like,
That's the part that
they haven't been
bothers
able to
me.
explain that. Like, explain not
No, they're
doing
not
that
going
for
to.
you, right? And
They're
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 not.
not going to, because the answer would not be well received. And
Right.
that's the part that bothers me about all this. Oh, we're going to do this in the name of player safety. No, you're not. You're doing this in
They're
the
not.
name of revenue safety. But if you were honest about it, we
Well, it's
could at least
about.
respect it, And
Right.
when it's like, hey, let's ban this tackle, just immediately out of nowhere. I mean, this thing came up this season, and now it's banned. Like, how impulsive can this league be in the name of player safety when you can't even make a surface change in the name of player safety? Like, that's just,
It's
it's so dishonest.
and it drives me nuts because they're billionaires. You can spend a couple
Yeah.
million to put on grass and maintain it, and they literally I think they just recently announced that next year one of the wild card games is going to be just on Amazon, like how they had it on Peacock this year, and they're paying like 120 million for one game to the NFL. How about you take that revenue and say that'll pay for our grass fields? Like, not that you don't have the money. I mean, these guys can look in the cushions of their couches and find the money it'll take for the grass field, but like,
Yeah.
you're getting all this revenue from TV. Like, put some of it back into player safety, which you say you care about. But
Yeah.
no,
It's just, it's dishonest. That's the part to me that just
yeah,
bugs the crap out of me, is
it's
it's
greed.
dishonest. And it's, if you're going to be greedy, just be honest about being greedy, and then, call a spade, and we can all deal at face value. But it just, like, this whole, oh, in the name of player safety, like, get out of here, man. If that's the goal, then yeah, put flags on them. Let's stop with this whole tackling nonsense. Just create a different league if you have to. But, and now we've got our alternative. The USFL is starting to emerge. Maybe that's what it'll be. Is the USFL will become real football, and the NFL will turn into the NFFL, right? National Flag Football League.
Yeah,
It's like, you got to stop. At some point, it's a violent game. It's like trying to say, like, well, NASCAR, we're gonna do, slow the things down to avoid crashes. No, man. Like, the point of NASCAR is to race as fast as you can, and crashes are an unfortunate part about it. You try to
yeah.
reduce them, but you're not gonna slow things down and bastardize the sport. So this one bothers me. It sits wrong with me.
Yeah,
Again,
I'm with
shout
you.
out to NFL Hitman. I totally respect his perspective on, like, hey, tackle better. Yeah, for sure. But this just doesn't feel like a very straightforward and honest move by the NFL, in my opinion. That's what bothers me the most. And it gives refs way too much power. We've all
Yeah,
seen it, right? Yeah, there's plenty of folks out there. We all talked about it. Oh, the refs are trying to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, right? Everybody said that. There are these different pass interference
oh,
calls that weren't made or were made, and
yeah.
all of that, whether it was or wasn't. This only leads to more of that,
Right.
unfortunately.
You're giving more responsibility to people that aren't good at what they're already doing.
Yeah,
So let's make their job more complicated.
yeah. It's just
I know.
not the move. Not the move. If anything, maybe they should, talk to NFL Hitman. We need to mandate some training. Like, let's get into the training of these things. Like, all right, that'll fix the problem
The
instead of,
tackling does need, I mean, from the college level to the NFL level, tackling is poor. So that
yeah,
does need to improve. But again, as a defensive player, like, I don't know how you play defense because you can't hit anybody in the head. You can't hit him in the knee. You can't really tackle a quarterback with any force. Like, you can't get your hands on the receivers. Like, what can you do? Now you got to be careful if you fall into their legs when you're tackling them. It's tough.
and if you're behind them, do you just go, oh, you got me? Like,
Right.
I don't like it. That's just where I'm at. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't like it. All right, man. Is it time that we get into some draft prospects here? What else we got here? There's only crickets in free agency. We don't have anything to mention in free agency
Yeah,
right
there's
now,
nothing.
right? Um, so yeah, then let's jump off. Let's have some fun with our draft prospect talk here. So real quick, we kind of teased receivers and corners last week as we finished up running backs and linebackers. So we're going to review that a little bit, talk about the top of the board real quick, and just touch on it because the top of the board at these positions is probably not available to the Packers unless they make some very unexpected move. Um, so who's at the top of the board for you at corner, Tim? Who you
So
got
it's
there?
it's kind of a 1A, 1B for me. It's Terry and Arnold from Alabama. It's Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. Those are my top two guys. We've talked about Mitchell before. We both really like him. It's a great story coming from, a smaller school in Toledo, and he went down and he's got, we knew he was a good sized cornerback, had a lot of ball production, but then he goes down and faces better competition at the Senior Bowl, kills it down there. He's one of the best players on the field for either team during the practices down there. Had a great combine, has a really good attitude. He went to the combine and the interviews said, like, I'm here to be the best. I'm not here just, to show that I belong because I'm from Toledo. I'm here to be the best, and tested through the charts.
Yes.
So really like his game. He's aggressive. He's got good size, and he's a great athlete. We'll get into all the RAS scores because that's extremely important to the Packers for cornerbacks. But I really like him. We've talked about him. Terry and Arnold from Alabama. He's got inside outside versatility. Came in as a safety as a recruit. Productive. He can play press coverage. Really good. Seems like there's always Alabama cornerbacks every year.
And receivers
So
too.
yeah, and receivers. So this is another one in a long line, and he's got a teammate too, who could be a first round pick. But I like Arnold a lot. I think he'd be a really good fit, and I like that he's got the inside and outside versatility. So you probably could bump him to the slot, play him outside. Both of those guys are going to be, it would take a big fall for either one of them to get the Green Bay. Let's just say, wouldn't expect them to be there at 25, but you never know. That's why they do the draft. So who
Well,
knows?
I mean, and that's where I actually was kind of excited to get into this conversation because I have like you took corners on this, right? So I haven't
Yeah.
done as much looking at the corners, but I certainly just sort of consume the sports media as it floats around,
Mhm.
and it really feels like there's a lot of difference in opinion on the ranking of the corners, like not even just the top 5, but like maybe the top 10.
Yeah.
And the one that got everybody all buzzed up today was Chris Sims. Did you see his rankings for corners?
I did not. I saw his rankings for receive. I try to avoid Chris Sims, but I did see his rankings for receiver, and that drove me nuts. So I haven't seen his corners, but
He is driving everybody nuts with his
what
rankings. There is, there's some Skip Bayless accusations being thrown around here.
what were his corners?
And let me say this: I enjoy the shakeups that Chris Sims throws out there, and I will say he was right about Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson
Did he
had
really like
had him as
Watson? I
his
don't know.
number 2. He did really
Okay.
like Watson. Anyway, I like because he usually will draw attention to some folks that you haven't heard much about, and I think that's probably ultimately the point when he does stuff like this without being totally outrageous. But it's interesting. So his 1 through 5: 1, Quinyon Mitchell; 2, Nate Wiggins; 3, DJ James, Auburn;
Okay.
4, Max Melton, Rutgers; and 5, DeCamerion Richardson, Mississippi State.
Yeah, that's much different than anyone else. So he's unique. I'll give him that. Um,
No Alabama corners there. No Cooper DeJean.
yeah.
Yeah, so I saw
Okay.
that and I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And so no TJ Tampa. Like there's a lot of Ennis Rakestraw. There's a lot of names that he put up there that just haven't heard. Like DJ James, he's ranked number 108 by PFF. That's on the this draft big board.
Hmm.
Like, so what
I
do we
don't know
make of
much
this
about.
here?
eh, I think it's just Chris Sims trying to be smarter than everyone else.
Fair enough.
I
Yeah.
don't know just DJ James that well. I think he was, I want to say, maybe like a 170-pound guy. And I was just,
Yeah.
I
Six
know
one,
I've
164.
164. Yeah, that's why I didn't do much research because I said there's no way they're drafting a 160-pound cornerback.
And he's 23 years old.
And
Almost
he's
the same
23.
age as your free safety, your free
Yeah,
agent safety.
right. Who's played 4 years in the league. So, no. And the other kid, Richardson from Mississippi State, he's another tall, skinny guy. Um, has a lot of speed, if I remember correctly. And I think he has a really high RAS number. But um, yeah, I didn't do a whole lot on him either, just because I didn't see much on him other than he
Yeah.
tested really well, which is great. He ran fast, and he's tall. He's just, I think, a buck 80 or buck 85, something like that, in that range. So he's a little thin, which isn't bad. But I can't tell you that much about him. So
Yeah.
Sims's one is out there. Um, Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, whatever. I'm
We'll
not a big
find
Chris
out.
Sims. Yeah, we'll find out. But for me, I mean, I agree with him about Mitchell, but I like the Alabama quarterbacks. I like Arnold, and then I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, which that's an awesome name.
Yeah.
We took Haha from Alabama. We could take Kool-Aid.
We need
Like,
Kool-Aid,
we
man.
need
Oh
Kool-Aid. And
yeah.
oh yeah, I mean, can you imagine that as Packer fans talking every week about Kool-Aid? Like,
He's gonna
and
make a
then
play. Lambo's gonna go, oh yeah. And if
yeah,
you don't, you're missing out. I don't know why you
the
wouldn't do that.
merchandise they can sell. I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot of money to be made there.
Yeah,
Kool-Aid, listen up, dude. Get it. Make sure you get it right on the branding and all that.
yeah, no kidding. And I think he's kind of a guy that's been forgotten about because
A little bit.
during the season, he was viewed as one of the top corners, and I'm not sure he didn't test until his pro day. He went to the combine and he did the medicals, and they found out they actually had a broken bone in his foot that he didn't even know about. Wasn't causing him pain or anything.
Hmm, that's
So he
wild.
said, "All right." They wouldn't let him test at the combine. He tested last week at his pro day, and I think he ran like a 4.45, something like that, which is plenty fast.
Plenty
You
fast.
know. So he had foot surgery like the next day, but he'll be back. If he's, might be back for mini camp, so he'll definitely be back for training camp. It's not like a long-term foot injury. It was a broken bone. Fell through the cracks for whatever reason, but he's got good size. He's been really productive.
Yep.
He's kind of like a smart, cerebral corner. I don't think he's ever going to be a corner that gets like, 9 interceptions in a year or is like real flashy, but he's just like that solid, reliable, um, versatile. I think he can, maybe bump inside at times too. I think he's a real nice player. Don't know if he'll ever be, Pro Bowl or All Pro, though I think he has that potential. But he's just like a guy where you plug him in and you're like, we have nothing to worry about there. He's going to be real nice for us. So I think he's got a shot to be there at 25. Maybe he goes sooner, but I think
Yeah.
he's more realistic than Mitchell or Arnold.
Yeah, he does. PFF's got him at 34 overall on the big board. So it does seem like he might have a
Yeah,
shot to be down in that
I've
range.
kind of seen him like between 20 and 40 in that range. So
Yeah.
who knows? And to your point, like with a lot of differences in the cornerbacks and the different rankings, I've seen that too. And kind of the way I'm looking at it, and I think as Packer fans, maybe we should look at it too, is we have to start looking at like eliminating guys because they're not meeting the Packers thresholds, because they do stick to thresholds, especially at cornerback and most definitely in the top 100 picks. So like there's certain guys who, and Nate Wiggins, I'm not sure if they're gonna like Nate Wiggins a lot. I like him. I think he's got great speed. He's a great athlete. He's 6'1", but at
It's
the
the way we like it,
combine
right?
he was 172 pounds or 170. He got up to 180, 182 for his pro day. And there was something I saw that maybe he was sick before the combine. He lost some weight, but okay, it's a stretch.
Still,
Maybe they
yeah.
stretch the measurements and say, all right, he lost some weight because he's sick. He can probably play at 185. Maybe we get him in the weight room and he gets up to one. Maybe they like him enough and say, we'll stretch the size. But everybody we as Packer fans, we know they don't like short corners. They don't like skinny corners. So if you go back, Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst, all their drafts, they've taken one cornerback that's under 190 pounds, and that was Shamar John Charles, who was like a
Yeah.
6th-round pick.
Yeah.
So they're not going to take, and again, maybe Goot stretches it and says, I'm going to ignore it. He's close enough to 190. I really like him. It's possible. He's a good corner. He's very fast, very athletic. He was productive at Clemson. Not real physical, doesn't really like run defense. So you'd also be looking at, you have him, you have Jair. Neither one of them are going to help you against the run. Are they willing to forget about that and say we don't care as much? We're going to take them as cover corners and worry about run defense with the other 9 guys. I don't know. But yeah, that like he's an example of, you really have to look at the Packers and what they expect. You got to look at the RAS score. You got to look at the height and the speed, or the height and the weight too with these guys, and that really whittles down the board. Like a Nate Wiggins, like Kamari Lassiter from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6 foot, but again, he was under 190, and then he didn't test great either. He ran like a 4.6, 4.7.
Mm.
So if you like him, you're probably going to have to like him at slot because, and again, Georgia coaches really like him, got good reviews, but if you watch him on film, he does struggle outside to keep up with guys. And at the NFL level, that's going to catch up to him. So you'd have to like him in the slot. And will the Packers like him enough inside to say, we value him here, so it's a different thresholds that we're looking at for an inside slot corner? I don't know, but there's a lot of guys you can start kind of, I don't want to say completely crossing off the Packers boards, but you really have to question just based on some of their size and their athletic measurements. A Packer Twitter guy, Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri, plays physical, plays tough. I like him. He's not real big. And he also didn't test well at the combine. He had a redo at his pro day, ran better. But he's probably still not quite the athlete. And again, they probably are going to view him as a slot guy. So how much value are they going to put on that? Definitely not in the first round, and maybe not in the second round. And Max Melton's another Packer Twitter favorite because he's Bo's brother. Now, he tested great, so there's no athletic, threshold that he didn't really hit, but he is slight. He's 5'11", but he's around 190, probably in the 180s.
Yeah.
And then you have the question of, do you think he can hold up outside? And I don't know. They may view him as slot only as well. So there's a lot of these guys that are kind of tweeners. And then we can talk about everybody's favorite on Packers Twitter, Cooper DeJean, DeJean, however you pronounce it, who hasn't tested. So we don't have his measurements because he broke his leg late in the year, and he's apparently going to test before the draft. Don't know when exactly that's going to be, but we don't have his testing numbers. He has the size, but to me, when I see him, I think he would be fine in the slot, and I think he's a projection at safety because he hasn't done it before. But I think you can see some of the qualities where you can say this guy can play safety in the NFL, and he definitely can play slot. I just don't think you can look at him and be like, we'll stick him opposite Jair and he's going to hold up every down outside. Like, I don't see that. I think you got to move him. Now, maybe they value him enough and they think he can be good enough at safety next to McKinney or in the slot to say, we'll take him and we'll plug him in there and he'll be fine. But I don't know. Again, that's something the Packers really haven't done, especially early in the draft. So we're kind of guessing with DeJean. But for me, I think he's an inside corner, or I think he's a safety. So yeah, it's really, there's some good corners, but I think there's a lot of, it's almost like a mixed bag because the Packers do have a lot of thresholds at safety that they want guys to hit. And these guys are right on the border, some of them. So it's what are they going to value and what are they willing to look past?
Yeah.
Or will they look past it?
That's the part that is kind of a mystery. And I think to your point, like the earlier in the draft, the less willing they'll be to go away from their criteria.
Yep. So that really shrinks the board early.
Yeah. And, looking at this list of guys, there's several of them that seem like great fits. And then there's others, I think you're right. Like, I don't know that they're looking at a Nate Wiggins. Because one, I think he's probably highly valued by somebody ahead of the Packers. They're probably assuming that. So you're going to have to make a move for him. And do you want the guy? Do you want to make a move for somebody who's not your ideal pick?
Right.
And I think that's the part for fans, and I wish that we had more insight into the process, but for fans, I think that's the part that is hard to wrap our minds around because we're so like kind of like Madden trained, right? It's like, oh, well, this is the ranking of these guys. And so if this is a highly ranked guy and he's available late, like, oh my gosh, you should get him. Like maybe he's not though. Like maybe he's
Hmm.
just a highly ranked guy by some media outlets or one media outlet, and then the rest kind of propagated that. Um, and that's what I think sometimes we get it wrong as just observers. Like we just totally miss on some of these things. And Cooper DeJean for me is the biggest question mark. You got PFF has him ranked 8th overall, like the overall on the big
That's
board
crazy
of
to me.
prospect. And then you've got Chris Sims, who's like, no, he's not even a top 5 DB to me. And it's like, wow, and I think that
Hmm.
illustrates just how much you can have a difference in opinion on some of these guys. Some of them I think it's more obvious, like your Joe Alts, right? Guy is just ridiculous. Or even Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, I don't think he's got a flaw. Like if you're just looking at this guy and you need a DB or you value DBs highly, I just don't see him making it very far in the draft because he doesn't seem to have a flaw. Yeah, he played at a small school, but you've seen what he
Right.
did against big competition already. You
Yeah.
know,
And we
so
know they like Senior Bowl guys because they draft a ton
yeah,
of them. So,
yeah,
and I know we're getting long on this. I know we want to get on the receivers, but
we're
so I'll
good.
just give you a couple sleepers, or we'll get in real
Yeah, yeah,
quick
yeah.
who may be that next tier after the potential first round guys. Um, One guy I kind of like, but he hasn't tested yet, so it'll be interesting when he does. Is TJ Tampa from Iowa State.
Yep.
Tall enough. It was weird. Iowa State had him listed at 200 pounds, but I saw him at the combine where he was like upper 180s. So what's his playing weight? Is he a 190, 195 guy? So that's the question. But he is tall. He is long. I wonder if he maybe have to be more of a zone based corner. So I don't know if that'll fit their scheme enough, but I think he does have enough quality where he can hold up outside and play man. Now, I don't think he's a down to down man cornerback. And I think the testing numbers will be really interesting if he does test. He had a hamstring injury, so hopefully he does test and we can see what the numbers are. If he tests really well and he's the athlete, then I think you can probably say he can hold up outside. And I think he would probably be a second round guy. And then I think a lot of these guys who potentially are second round, third round guys that the draft analysts are talking about, we have to project like are they nickels? Because if they're nickel corner, do the Packers value them? Because they haven't really shown that they do value a nickel. I mean, I guess they are with a Nixon in a way, but in the draft they haven't really shown that they value that specific position. So that'll be an interesting, like, maybe they do take somebody and somebody they project as a nickel, and one of those guys is somebody who's coming in on a top 30 visit to Lambeau, and that's Jerry and Jones from Florida State.
I was just about to ask about him.
He's got pretty good size for a nickel too.
Yep.
I think he's 6 foot. Top 30 visits, so they at least have some interest. 2023, he spent almost the entire year at nickel for Florida State and played really well, which was a shutdown corner inside.
Highly graded
So
on PFF in
I think
2023.
he's ceiling's a second round pick. I don't know if he gets in the second. He's probably a third or a fourth round guy, but that's fine. And I think they could get him there. And if the difference with these top 30 visits are with Gute and Ted Thompson. Ted Thompson used him a lot for guys who were either late round picks or guys he was going to sign after the draft. Very rarely did he bring in somebody he was going to end up drafting. Whereas Gute will bring guys in who he ends up drafting, and he has done that over the last few years. So these are guys that he's looking at. So if Jerry and Jones is coming to Green Bay for a visit, he's
Very
on their
strong indication.
yeah, it's an indication there. So maybe that means they are looking at Nichols, or maybe it's just they like Jones enough to bring him in and potentially get to know him for for drafting him down the line. So he's one to watch. And then just a couple quick sleepers. Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, really big. He's 6'3", but he's a little skinny, about a buck 90, buck 92.
Yep.
I hate to make this comparison, but just from a build standpoint, not from a football player standpoint, just from kind of what he looks like, tall and skinny, kind of looks like Kevin King. Don't want to get that in anybody's head that he plays like Kevin King, but he just tall and skinny reminds me of Kevin King.
Hey, on paper, Kevin King looked good, man. We all thought Kevin King was going to be the real deal.
Yeah, we did, and he wasn't. But
he wasn't.
But the injuries hurt him a lot too. In fairness,
yeah,
but
true. That's true.
Jackson's probably got to be a slot corner at least initially. But I like the size, and he tested great. He's got the athletic ability and tall, long corners. Like that's nice to have. Obviously, that's a good commodity. And then the other name I'm going to give you, I can't even really pronounce the kid's name. I'm going to give it a shot. Chigzoe Enumison, or I don't know. It's a tough name to pronounce.
Good enough try, I think.
Yeah. He goes to Colorado State. He's a third-day pick. 6'1", 200 pounds. Ran a 4.39 at his pro day. His RAS score, if you plug in all of his pro day, would have been a 9.75, which is obviously elite, long, athletic dude. A third-day pick. Take a flyer on him. He's an athlete and he's got good size. Why not? Just somebody I saw out there and figured I could see them doing that. 5th round, 6th round, something like that. Somebody with that kind of size and athletic ability at receiver. You can at least come in and play specialty, or at corner, you can at least come in and play special teams for you.
Yeah. Nice, man. Nice work there.
I know that was a lot.
On the corners.
Those are my corners.
I want to plug one more in, and this is strictly because I saw a little blurb on Twitter from some of our friends at the Senior Bowl there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was Jim Nagy or if it was Ben Fennell. It was one of them. But Cam Hart apparently is much higher on scout boards than he is on media boards. So take that for what it's worth. Some inside info from some guys that spend time around GMs and scouts. Cam Hart is higher up than
he's about 6 foot. Yeah, he's another big corner. He's about 6'3", 200 pounds, and his RAS score was 8.88. So pretty good there too.
Pretty good. Yeah, and Notre Dame. So he's got good competition. He's played against there. Graded pretty solid on PFF last season. Yeah, that's a guy to keep an eye out for. But yeah, overall, it looks like there's a lot of talent in this cornerback class. I think the real challenge is figuring out really the hierarchy of it.
Right, and those guys that are going to meet the Packers' requirements. Because I think if you're doing it that way, a lot of guys fall off the board and it becomes smaller. And then it also, the interesting thing will be, are they going to prioritize and go after a nickel corner? Because if they're not, then I think the board gets really short because a lot of these guys, Max Melton and Kamari Lassiter, Andrew Phillips from Kentucky, Rake Straw, Cooper, like they project inside. So if the Packers aren't going to prioritize nickels, I think it really shrinks the field for them. But maybe, we see Jerry Jones coming in. We see they paid Keyshawn decent money for at least year one. Maybe they are moving in that direction to make it a bigger priority.
Time will tell, sir. Time will tell. But it's a nice problem to have, especially even, looking at this. Yeah, you got Nixon there. You got Valentine, too. And you got Ballantyne. You got some competition in that room.
Yeah, and I'll point out about Valentine. I'm glad you brought him up because Gute mentioned him today, too.
Yeah.
He said he needs, he thinks he can start in the NFL and that he thinks he kind of showed that as a rookie. He didn't make him the starter and say, yeah, he's the unquestioned, but he just said he needs to get a little bigger, needs to improve in the offseason. But it really sounded, reading between the lines of Gute's answer, that they think that whether it's 2024 or down the line, that Valentine can be a starter and that he's, they're at least comfortable if they don't get a corner early in the draft or somebody that can, come right in and start for them, that they're comfortable going into next year at Valentine as a starter.
Yeah, and I mean, from what we've seen so far, I think we can agree with that. He, as a 7th round rookie, looked pretty damn good. So I'm excited to see what happens when he gets a full off season and some real coaching. But
I love how you throw that in there.
Anyway, so No, DBs will be an interesting one. Cooper DeJean, I think, is going to be a wild ride in its own. Like, where's this guy going to go? Who is he?
Hmm.
Is he a safety? Is he a DB? It's just a very, very
And I think he's
interesting one to
good.
follow.
I think he's a good football player based on what he did at Iowa. I don't see him being an every down outside cornerback. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean he can't be really good in the slot or really good in safety or some kind of hybrid role. Like
Yeah, he might
smart,
be built for that. That's that. What do they call it? Star position.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
defense that can take advantage of his abilities. He could be really good if he gets the right fit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So then on the other side of things here, the guys that the cornerbacks are going to be guarding and trying to prevent from catching the ball, we're going to talk about some receivers here, and
Nice.
we're not going to spend too much time at the top, so everybody knows about the top. We will spend a little bit of time just sort of acknowledge the top because it is strong. It's a
Yes.
very strong top. And I will say, I think that there are some folks that are getting, I don't even know, like hype boredom on Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
Give it a break, guys. Guy's the
Yeah.
real
I
deal.
I love Malik Neighbors, Roma Doomsday. Like they're great, but holy crap, Malik! It's quit overthinking Harrison. He's a
Yeah,
stud.
just don't overthink it, and again, like, let me start, and maybe this is really the only point that needs to be made about the guy, because everybody's seen the highlights, everybody knows the pedigree, right, and everybody knows that the freak athlete that this kid is, but he went from C.J. Stroud as his quarterback, and we all know what C.J. Stroud is now.
Right.
The the Texans all of a sudden are a trendy team to talk about for the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah.
After like a year ago, right now, the Texans were
Trash.
like just a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
He went from C.J. Stroud to, what was that Ohio State quarterback's name?
McCord,
McCord. Yeah.
who's now this quarterback at Syracuse. So
Yeah, he's not even at Ohio State anymore because
yeah.
he was not good.
No.
So in doing that, Marvin Harrison still caught 67 passes for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. Like that, with a bad quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
is unreal. That's not right. Like that in itself is a massive accomplishment. Nobody's acknowledging right now.
Right.
But the guy's a freak. So
He's a beast.
let's just
Take it
leave.
from a fan of a Big Ten team that played him every year. Like, oh my, the dude's he's a
Got
freak.
beat by him a few times.
Yeah, he lit Penn State up more than a few times. He was uncoverable. Like he's awesome. Like all respect to him. He's a stud, and don't overthink it. He's the best receiver in this class. And there's a lot of good ones, but he's the best. He'll be
in
one.
my opinion.
It'll be real quick. It's not going to take long until he's talked about among the best in the NFL.
I agree. I totally agree. In my opinion, in this class, there are 4 guys that could be the best receiver in a draft class. But because of the presence of each other, they're not, right? You can't. There can only be
Who's
one
your fourth?
receiver.
I know who
one.
the 3 are. Who's the fourth?
Yeah, we're gonna get there. But yeah, I wanted to start there. Like, there's not any shock content here to talk about why Marvin Harrison isn't that dude. He is that dude. So anybody who's doing that, just stop it. Like, you sound silly, and we just need to be done with that conversation.
Chris Sims had him 3rd.
I know. God, dog it. That guy is just begging for attention right now. But yeah, so let's not overlook that. Let's let Marvin Harrison Jr. be receiver 1 in this class, and I'm trying to jump over to his stats to go for the year by year here and just see exactly what he did to Penn State, because it looks like
Oh God, he had 100 yards in both games. So here
it is. He's got in this year in 2023, which Penn State was ranked number 7 when they played him. He had 11 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown. That's tough, man. And they've got a DB who's going to be in the NFL.
Oh, they got a couple who are going to be, yeah. And the one who, Kalen King, up until that game, everybody thought he was potentially a first-round guy. And now he's a third-day guy.
That game broke him.
It kind of did in a way. And then 2022, Joey Porter Jr. was covering him, and he was a
10
high second
catches,
round pick of the Steelers.
185 yards. No
Yeah,
touchdown, though. But 10 catches for 185
shut him
yards
down.
against Joey Porter Jr., he's a
Hmm.
pretty good corner.
Yeah,
So, yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. is that dude. So,
and I think he had 100 yards against Michigan this year. And as good as Michigan's defense was, and all their NFL guys, I think he put up 100 on them.
let's
I could be
go
wrong, but I
have a
thought he did.
look. He did.
Yeah.
5 catches, 118 yards, and a touchdown.
Hmm.
Yeah, so let's stop with the nonsense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy.
Yes.
But this is a very, very difficult receiver draft to evaluate because they're all very, very good. You watch these guys and you want to be like, oh, he's the best. And then you watch the next guy, you're like, oh, maybe he's not. And so Marvin Harrison is that guy. Malik Neighbors is 1B. That guy is out of this world. Like he's Jamar
awesome.
Chase like. In that, like, as far as like the build, the explosiveness, just the type of receiver that he is, he's a guy that scares you because of just how capable he is. He can jump high, he can run fast, he can change direction, he runs excellent routes, and he's cerebral, right? Like he knows where he belongs within the offensive concept. He knows where he wants to be against a defense, whether he's got the ball coming his way or not. I want to call him receiver one, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is absolutely receiver one. So
Yeah.
anyway, Malik Neighbors is nuts. The guy should not get out of the top 10. In most drafts would be receiver one. And then Rome Odunze is what you guys would expect me to say, and he's certainly part of this conversation, but Brian Thomas Jr., this guy's a freak, and he's being overshadowed by another freak. But, I mean, 6'3", 210, and I believe let's go back to his combine numbers.
He's got a 9.82 RAS. Yeah, he ran a
Pretty good.
4.33 at 6'3", 200 pounds. So
That's
I saw someone, I don't remember who it was. Somebody compared him to Christian Watson.
and listen, I think that's a tough comparison to make because Christian Watson didn't play at LSU.
Right.
So until he gets into the league, that'll be tough to
NFL
state.
Christian.
Yeah,
And they've had a
but
lot of great receivers there.
right.
They know how
And
to.
so I think we're getting a little bit kind of lulled to sleep by this, but this guy's athleticism is absolutely nuts. And when you go back and watch him, he plays big. He plays really big, and he is big. But I mean, like,
And
he's
fast.
just dominant, man. Like,
Yeah.
when you watch him, you wonder, like, gosh, what do you have to do to cover that guy? And you can't bully him. He's huge. He's 6'3", 210, but I mean, he looks every bit of it. And 4'3" at that size, that's fast. That's insanely fast. And we're all distracted by Xavier Worthy, and there's a lot of speed in this draft. But yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. jumps off the page at me, and he's one that I think a lot of people just don't realize because of everything else that's going on. But he's just a home run waiting to happen. Because of his speed, his size, he can get down the field quick, and he's gonna out jump you. Like, good luck at DB out jumping that guy. It's just really, really, really exciting guy to watch. So let me see what my notes were here. Eye-popping athleticism, as good as any receiver in the top 5 of this draft. Size stands out. Speed gives him home run potential. One thing that I did love is he played in the bowl game against Wisconsin. Now, this is a guy who knew that he was going to be a top prospect in the draft. You know, potential, for sure he had to be thinking potential first-round pick, and still played in that bowl game when a lot of people sat out. So I loved that. Let let's see here. There are occasions he doesn't make the catch. You'd like to see him come up with that, but I mean, it's kind of nitpicky, I guess, because the plays he makes outweigh that. And he had 68 catches for almost 1,200 yards, 1,100 yards, 11.77, and 17 touchdowns with Malik Neighbors on the other side of him. Yeah. He's receiver 2 catching 17 touchdowns. That's nuts. This guy is really good. And oh, by the way, Rome Odunze, also really, really, really good. And Rome Odunze might win the Attitude Award. This is the guy who's out there and wants to compete. I think he had a great interview at the NFL Combine saying he was there to do everything because he wants to prove he's that dude. Yeah, I mean, size, speed. I mean, I don't even need to go into all of it. You guys saw what he did as a receiver at Washington. And another draft could very well be receiver 1. To me, this Rome Odunze feels a lot like Mike Evans. Mike Evans a little bit bigger, but just as far as like the person, like Mike Evans is a pro. He came in, was elite from day one, and hasn't let up, right? He just comes in and just puts the work in. It feels like Rome Odunze is going to be that dude. So it'll be interesting to see who actually gets him, because I think where he ends up will determine a lot about his trajectory. But there's a lot to love about the guy. There's not much to dislike about him. So those top 4 could be receiver 1 in another draft. They're all phenomenal. And Neighbors, Thomas, Odunze, not really a specific order there. I'm very clear that Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 1. So that's the top of the receiver class. After that, you've got a really, really interesting slate of guys. My next one after that is going to be A.D. Mitchell from Texas. This guy, another exceptional athlete, it's like, we just have to keep saying exceptional athlete. And if you're younger and wondering why we're just repeating ourselves like this, because, you get like 1.43 guy in a class. And now it's like 4.3, 4.3, 4.3. If you're running a 4.5, you're slow at this point. So you have to keep reiterating, because the exceptional athleticism it hasn't been that common. I guess it feels like it's more common now. But anyway, yeah, A.D. Mitchell is an incredible athlete, really fast at the combine. Trying to pull up his combine scores here. He ran a 4.3, 4.40 at 6'2", 205. That's pretty good. That's pretty fast at that size right there. 1.52 split, or 10-yard split. So the acceleration's phenomenal. 39.5 vertical, 11.4 broad jump. That is explosive. That's as good as, what's the record? The record used to be 11.2. I think somebody recently broke it, and then it's been broken a few times. But 11.4 is one of the better broad jumps you're ever going to see out of the receiver group. His athleticism's off the charts. Comes from a good offense at Texas. Was surrounded by other weapons. I am really, really interested in this guy. He seems to me like the most likely after those top 4, which will not be within reach for the Packers. We'll just say that. He seems like this is where you start having kind of access to him as the Packers. This is not that he might fall to 25, but this is even a guy that if he's the last first-round grade they've got on their board, I could see them trading up for. And the reason for that is he can play any receiver position. For them to invest high draft capital into a receiver in this draft, which they're going to be tempted to do because there's so many good ones, you have to be able to play all the receiver positions. They're not going to just go invest in a guy to be Christian Watson's backup or Romeo Doubs' backup. Maybe in like the 5th or 6th round they would, but not in the 1st or 2nd round. So you need a guy who is going to be that Swiss Army knife and essentially take some of the load off of Dontavian Wicks, and you end up probably those two specialize a little bit. But this guy can do it all. And he's fast. He's got everything that you would want for a Matt LaFleur offense. I just love watching him. He's just an excellent receiver. Again, you have to say kind of the same things about a lot of these guys, but very, very explosive, very good route runner. I think what did I write down about him? Where'd he go? Okay, anyway, but yeah, so A.D. Mitchell's one that I really like. And then from there, it's kind of tough to determine how the rest of them will fall. I think this is where it's going to be what team wants what, right? Because Coleman out of Florida State could be your next guy. He's a big dude, not as fast, but still explosive and does have some speed. Or, if you're a team that wants, you're Al Davis and you want that speed, Xavier Worthy's sitting there with his record-breaking 40, and he looks like a good receiver. He's a little smaller, but and then the board is just kind of blurry with talent, which is sort of funny to say. But, you got McConkey out of Georgia, you got Franklin out of Oregon, Walker out of UNC, Leggett out of South Carolina, Burton out of Bama, Corley out of Western Kentucky. He got some attention today. Javon Baker out of Central Florida. I mean, the list keeps going on. The two other receivers out of Washington. There's a lot, and it's hard to say who would go in round 2 or 3 versus round 4 through 6, right? It depends on what the teams are going to prioritize. But what I will say is if you get into that second round and the Packers didn't take somebody in the first, a receiver in the first round, and like a Xavier Leggett is around, that's a guy I could see them taking. And I know Xavier Leggett is kind of a trendy, popular one floating around Twitter just because of his athleticism, his measurables. His film is fun to watch. His highlights are awesome. 6'3", 225, big dude, 1,200 yards receiving last season. Great athlete. Another one is a great athlete. We're going to say that a lot. But, at 225, he ran a 4.39. That is exceptional, man. Like, that's a big dude moving real fast, and so – and he's got a 40-inch vertical, a 10.6 broad jump, so he's explosive. He's a crazy athlete. Steve Smith said he looks like DK Metcalf. So a lot of guys that I think are very, very interesting after the first round. And there's even more that we can touch on next week. We'll go in some deep sleepers that I'll get into next week before we really round out the receiver class. But I think where it's going to be really, really interesting to watch is going to be rounds 1 through 3 for the Packers, because that's where you have exceptional talent that will be available that otherwise would not be available in that place. And that's how you end up with a guy being best player available at the position, even though you're like, we don't need that. But, if you're looking at a guy like a Xavier Leggett, who, again, 4.3 40 at 225, that's big, that's fast, that's explosive. Very, very tempting athlete. Great film, productive in college. That guy in the second or third round is head and shoulders above what's going to be available at most other positions, because he should have been gone in the top 15 or top 20. But because this draft is so loaded with receiver talent, you're going to see these guys that would normally be first-round talent in the second and third round. So strap in. I will say this. I don't know who they'll take, but I will be absolutely blown away if they didn't come out of round 3 and have a receiver somewhere from round 1 through 3.
You really think so? You think they'll take one second day?
There's just too much talent. And the way that Gute drafts, I don't know. You don't know how the board's going to fall. That's why I don't play with these mock drafts very much, because it's such a crapshoot on how the board will fall. But the abundance of talent is so hard to ignore.
I wonder, too, if they want to take somebody who's a little bit of a different body type than what they already have, like a Keon Coleman or a Leggett.
Yeah, because they don't have that 6'3", 225 like bully ball type dude yet.
Yeah. So I
That's
wonder
why
if,
I see him being an interesting option. And then AD Mitchell is one. Yes, you do have that and he's 6'2", so he's a little taller, but like 6'2", 200, 210, that kind
yeah,
of, medium
but-
range. He's not small, but he's not huge. That's most of your receivers, right? I mean, Dobbs, he's kind of that guy.
yeah.
Wicks is kind of that guy. They're not big, they're not small, but they're in that just real
But if
athletic
with
size.
I'm with you with Mitchell. Like if they view him as he can play every receiver position and he's this high of an athlete, maybe they see him as, I don't know, number one receiver or at least a high end number two, and maybe they would be swayed to take him, uh,
Yes, I think that's
even though he's not
that's
a different body type.
and that's how Gute thinks, right? We talked a little bit about that, but he's looking at this not necessarily as what goes on in 2024, but what does it look like? These guys will be around in 2028. Who's still around then? Because you're
Right.
not going to have Watson, Dobbs, Wicks, and Reed all four around by then. You might,
You might, but
but
if
probably
they're
not.
as good as we're hoping they're going to be, it's going to be hard to
Then
keep them all.
That's you're gonna have a hard time paying all of them. You're gonna have a hard time keeping them all happy. But
Hmm.
if you're winning championships, that's different. So hopefully that's what happens. But yeah, so I think that's where they're looking at it, and you're looking at this guy, and think Devontae Adams in 2014, right? He was not needed to be receiver one in that group. You had Jordy, you had Randall, I can't even remember the rest of them, but you had a group of guys in 2014 there. You didn't need Devontae to come in and be that dude yet, but you could see a few years down the road, oh, he could be that dude then, and we may not have one of these dudes then. And that's the way I think that they're looking at this class because of how strong this class is. And AD Mitchell, this guy, and yes, we love the guys we've got, but he's a better athlete than Dontavian Wicks, than Romeo Dobbs, than maybe Jaden Reed too. I'm not going to say Christian Watson because Christian Watson is an absolute freak, but AD Mitchell is a freak, and that's where it's like, you just plug that in, let him be a role player now, and develop into receiver one at some point.
He had a 9.99 RAS.
That's what I'm telling
It
y'all.
doesn't get much better. You can only get to 10.
Yeah, I mean he's up there. And again, when you have a guy like that,
Mhm.
usually he's not getting out of the top 10 or 15 in a draft. AD Mitchell in this draft probably will be available in that 20 to 25 range. So it's very, very interesting to keep an eye on, and just kind of preparing you Packer fans for something that everybody, at least based on your mock drafts on Twitter, you all think that Gute drafts for need, and he does not draft for need. So start looking at who's going to be best player available where, and that'll probably give you a better indication of what he's doing. And receiver just looks too good, man. It's insane how good this class looks. So. And we didn't even get to mention some of the fun sleepers. There are fun sleepers. I mentioned a few of them before. One of them is in Division III. Little teaser there. You can go out and do some research to see if you can figure out who it is, but we'll talk about him next week, and we have talked about him before. Kid out of Idaho looks pretty good, worth keeping an eye on. But there's a few guys that if you take them in the 6th or 7th round, you want to pay attention. So we'll touch on some of those guys next week. But Tim, any final thoughts on this one, sir?
No, it's fun talking draft. Now we're really getting into it, and it's getting closer, a month away. So it's a lot more to talk about, but we can start really focusing in on what the Packers are probably going to do, who they're going to potentially take, and what positions they're really targeting.
Yeah, the top 30 visits are a big indicator, so pay attention to those.
Yeah, they're starting to filter out. Pro days are starting to wrap up soon here, so we're going to have testing numbers on everybody, or at least everybody was healthy enough to test. So that'll be a good indicator as well.
One thing I thought was interesting, and who knows what will happen with this. Michigan and Missouri had their pro days on the same day, and Gute chose to go to Missouri.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It was interesting. And Michigan sent 18 guys to the combine. So most of those are going to get drafted. So it's interesting that there's a couple guys in Missouri. I mentioned Rakestraw, though his testing doesn't meet their requirements, but maybe they bypass it. The defensive lineman they have there, an offensive lineman. So there's a few guys in Missouri, but nothing like what they're what's coming out of Michigan. But yeah, it was an interesting little nugget that came out of it.
Yeah, no, I thought that was kind of head scratching myself because there's a lot of talent at Michigan. You would think
Well,
that,
they did have a scout up there. It just wasn't good.
right,
But
right.
still,
It's,
he's on the road somewhere else. He went to Alabama and he went to Wisconsin, but he didn't go to Michigan. So I don't know.
yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. You just never know what to make of these things. Maybe he already has all of the scouting he can take on the Michigan guys and doesn't need that kind of work. But
or maybe he's being Ted Thompson and there's guys he likes and he doesn't want to tip anybody off.
That, yeah. Hey, we're in the fog of war right now. Everything is a game to these guys. So, you should always prepare yourself to be lied to because it's very possible.
Yep. There are going to be a lot of lies coming out.
Lots of lies over the next few weeks. Not from us though. We're not lying to you guys. We're just here having some good old fashioned Packer fan fun, and trying to figure out who are some of these guys that are about to be Packers. We're about to get some new family members here. Some guys we get to talk about and figure out who they're gonna be. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time of year. It's kind of like the lead up to Christmas. What are you gonna get? Is there a big present under the tree or not? But, the thing that's fun about doing this draft breakdown is seeing that there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of guys across the board that you got to be excited about if the Packers take them. I mean, think about, Carl Brooks last year in the 6th round. It's on draft day, when the draft is here by the 6th round, we're all sort of tuned out like, okay, I'll just see who they got later. I'll check it out, look it up, whatever. We're kind of bored by those folks, and you got a couple of them on day 3 that were impactful for the Packers as rookies. And Valentine, Brooks, was Wicks was a 5th
Wicks
rounder?
is 5th round.
So
Yeah.
that's day 3 too. So this is fun. There are guys to watch for, and apparently Gute is good at plucking them out of day 3. So we're going to try to cover some of these names that don't get mock drafted quite as much, or maybe they're not being talked about on NFL Network or whoever the big sports media is that you watch. Because these guys could be future Packers. It could be, some guys that end up making plays for the Packers on Sundays, and it's fun to see who those guys are going to be early on. So we're trying to bring the attention to them for you guys, educate you a little bit each week, and then when the draft rolls around and Gute's picking guys on day 3, you'll know who they are. So that'll be fun. But thank y'all for joining us this week, hanging out with us on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. We'll come on back next week. We're going to be breaking down tight ends and safeties next week. We're getting into. And I got to say, I've already done a little bit of work on the safeties.
Me too.
I think that's going to be a fun conversation.
Yes. Yeah, it's an interesting class.
Yeah, very interesting class. Not as athletically exciting as some of the others, but also some things that may not be as they seem. So let's come on back next week. We're going to talk about that safety position. I know not many people are very excited about the tight end position, and this isn't a very exciting tight end class. So
be glad they got Musgrave and Kraft last year.
Oh boy. And again, look at that. It's almost as if Gute knew what this tight end class would look like.
Maybe it was
imagine. But anyway, so come on back next week with us. We'll break down the safeties. We'll talk a little bit about the tight ends that could be out there. There might be some fun guys that you haven't heard of before that could be athletic flyers. You just never know. So let's chop it up, though. Come on back and see us. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those socials. Spike that like button for us. Subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel for us. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go, Pack, go.